Manipulate faces, edges, and vertices. In this video, we'll use edit form, scale a set of faces, and move a group of edges. In Fusion 360, we want to carry on with our box primitive. With this body 1, we want to learn a little bit more about the modify edit form tool and how we can use it to create specific geometry. So I'm going to start by selecting edit form and take a look at the edit form dialog. First, we need to select a T-spline entity. The entity can either be a vertex or multiple vertices, it can be an edge or multiple edges, or a face or multiple faces. By default, the selection filter is set to all, which means that we can select faces, vertices, or edges. If we do a box select, you'll notice that we're selecting faces and edges. If we change this selection filter to vertices, you'll notice the display changes and gives us just the vertex display. If we do a box select, we're only selecting those vertices. The same thing is true for using just edges or just faces. In addition to having the selection filter set to all or multi, we have a transform mode, and by default this is also set to multi. If I select a face, the multi-transform manipulator on screen shows us the ability to transform in a single direction, transform in a plane, or we can use scale in a single direction, scale in two directions or on plane, and we can also rotate. By changing the manipulator to be only translation, we will limit the number of degrees of freedom that we have, but oftentimes this can make the selection process a little bit easier. If we only want to rotate or we only want to scale, using these options can simplify the process. So in this case, if I want to scale just in the Z direction, or if I want to scale in the Y direction, or if I want to scale in the X direction, I can grab just those directions. If I want to scale in both Y and Z, I can use the upper corner. If I want to scale in X and Z, I can use this upper corner, and X and Y, this lower corner here. Understanding the various transform modes is a critical step in creating these T-spline bodies. But there is a lot more to the edit form tool. Next, let's talk about coordinate space. By default, we're going to be using what's called world space, and that's the coordinate system based on the view cube in the upper right-hand corner. If I select a face, I'm moving in X, Y, and Z. There are other options that we have, for example, view space. View space is only going to give us two axes, but it's going to be aligned to however our model is currently viewed. If I rotate this around, the view space changes based on the orientation of the model in relation to our viewing point. This can be extremely helpful, but in most cases, it'll likely stay on world space. There are some other options, such as selection space, which can be normal to the selection of a surface or multiple surfaces. And then we also have local per entity. Again, local per entity can be helpful, especially when we're dealing with curvature that we want to move normal to its current position. We aren't going to go through all of the options inside of edit form, but there is one more that I do want to mention, and that's called soft modification. Soft modification is extremely helpful when the changes that you want to make are affecting more of the model than you intended. For example, with soft modification off and this vertex selected, you can see that it's just pulling this single vertex and likely it's changing the overall shape of our design. If we turn on soft modification, we can see colorization of the edges and vertices, and the red color indicates areas that are going to move more, the white color indicates areas that are going to move less, and if none of them are shaded, those are areas that will not move. So now as I pull, you can see that it's having more of a general effect on the body rather than just pulling that single vertex. This can be configured based on face count, based on distance, or based on another option for rectangular face count, which lets you define length and width faces. So for example, if I only want to affect one face in a single direction, but two faces in another, I have the ability to do that. We can also modify the transition, whether it's linear between the edges, whether it's bulge, or whether it's smooth. This is more apparent on larger models with more complex curvature, but it is important to play around with these tools to see how they can affect the transition and changes in your models. For now, I'm going to turn soft modification back off and select OK. I want to navigate back to a home view and make sure that I save this before moving on.